And now, AM 650 presents your source for leading-edge news and information on today's hottest products and services. This is Experts on Call on AM 650.
Welcome to Experts on Call. It's Quay Pacific's Talk About Strata. Sterling Faux with you, joined in studio by the Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia, the province condo columnist, Tony Gioventu, back with us again. Hello.
Hey, Sterling. How are we doing tonight?
I am well, thank you. It's good to see you, and it's also a real pleasure to welcome back to the show a woman who was with us last year. It's a real treat to say hello again to Elaine McCormack, who practices strata law with the Vancouver firm Alexander Holburn. Elaine, welcome back.
Thank you for the invite. I'm back again, Sterling.
Well, it's great to see you back again. It's always a real treat to have a lawyer in the studio with Tony and me, because we can kick some of the issues around and answer our emails and all the rest of it, but sometimes a legal opinion is extremely valuable. And here we are in June as we get into the summer fun season for strata owners. It's not all fun and games. And what do you find, Elaine, in your experience practicing strata law, are the most common points of contention or tension between strata owners as we get into the warm time of the year?
Oh, sure, because what you find is that people interact more. So they're outside more, they're sharing more of the common areas. And issues like smoking, cigarettes, issues like being outside around barbecues, and even dealing with air conditioners can cause a lot of difficulties between neighbors.
All right, now, Tony, in your experience, and you're the one that gets all the emails week after week, people complaining about their neighbors. What do people complain about most? What's the biggest beef? Insensitivity? Could you put it down to that?
Well, I think they complain about noise, anything that basically invades or disrupts their use of their strata lot or their space. So noise is a big one. There's usually a good dose of complaints about barbecues causing damage to buildings through the summer. And I think last summer we had 3 major fires in the province resulting from barbecues in wood frame buildings that were multifamily buildings. And that's significant. So there are safety issues for people. We have all the usual issues of people deciding to go away for the summer and let their unit out as a short-term rental or a house exchange for someone who's just come in for the summer and doesn't really care about the strata's bylaws or anything. And
sure.
We have all of the guest parking issues that come when the parking overflows, and you end up around July 1st when everybody hosts parties and things, and they're all crammed into one space, fighting for parking and all of the things that are allocated. And then, of course, we have all the other issues. We have flags that people like to put up during the summertime for festivals and holidays, people now buy portable hot tubs. And, you know, the other thing that we came across not long ago was people now putting these portable propane heaters on their decks and balconies, so they can use their decks and balconies more frequently. But again, fire hazards, problems, damage, risk, and nuisance to other people if you're in wood frame buildings or if you're in balconies or patios that are fairly enclosed. So, you know, there are a lot of issues that kind of come out of the woodwork in the summer when we start moving our lifestyles outdoors.
Elaine, back to the matter of barbecues, which is something most of us enjoy doing at some point over the summer, frequently as possible in a lot of cases. In stratas, particularly high-density stratas, there are, generally speaking, rules regarding barbecues, and my homework, so far at least, tells me that by and large, a lot of stratas discourage, in fact disallow, individual propane barbecues on balconies. Do you find that too?
That's right. I do bylaws for strata corporations, so I draft bylaws then to be considered by council and voted on by the owners at general meetings. And one of the bylaws that people want drafted from time to time is to prohibit barbecues from patios and balconies. And they're concerned for a few reasons. One is concern about smoke and how that might cause difficulties to other people in the building. And the other concern is safety and the possibility of having a fire.
Right. And even the transporting of these propane tanks through the building, up and down the elevators, all of that sort of thing, there are safety considerations there as well. Now, one remedy that is possible is to have, particularly a newer building, pre-wired so that you can have a balcony, a barbecue on your balcony that taps into a natural gas flow system, so there are no propane tanks to threaten the security of others. Is that a remedy that is commonplace in Strata, or because it's still a smoky old barbecue on the balcony, it's just not on?
It's one of the things that happens in newer buildings, but for older buildings, what you'll find is that sometimes an individual owner wants to make that change. So they want to put in the ability to have a gas line into their townhouse area, into their patio area, and that creates other issues because then, of course, they're altering common property,
Sure.
potentially making even a change to the building exterior and doing all sorts of things.
Okay. Now, clearly, as Tony has identified with his list of summer issues that people, scrape up against each other, lawyers are the last place of resort for a lot of these disputes. Do you find, Elaine, that by and large, most of these aggravating situations get resolved simply by the parties able to talk to each other and work things out?
Oftentimes not. What happens, I think, sometimes is that people are, their home is their castle. It's where they're supposed to go and relax. So they have trouble confronting one another. And although it may be best if they confront one another, they often don't start that way. They often start by talking to the council members. And so at that stage, it becomes a three-way situation where, and then the owner who is being complained of maybe feels that everybody's ganging up on that particular owner, and it causes a difficulty. The best starting point for resolving a dispute, of course, would be to talk to the person that is causing you the issue, but that often doesn't happen.
Why not, Tony? Why do people insist on the third party? Is it, as Elaine suggests, that it's my home? I've put a serious chunk of change down on this place. I don't want to hassle with the guy across the hall. I'm paying condo fees to have somebody come in and intermediate on my behalf. Is that the feeling there?
Well, and the result of that is they're not really prepared to negotiate. I just went out and usually the result of this that you see is someone's gone out and just spent $1,400 on a very high-end barbecue, now puts it on their deck or their balcony, may not have read the bylaws to discover, nope, that barbecues are not permitted, or even if they are permitted, are not using it in a responsible way. So they're spewing smoke and burn off and things that the other residents above them are experiencing because it's summertime.
Sure.
Most of our buildings are not air conditioned, and as a result, people have their doors and windows open in their patios. And if you're in a high-rise or mid-rise building, you can safely leave your windows open probably through the night. And if somebody fires up their barbecue at 11 o'clock, you're now, you're in your bed and suddenly your room is filled with smoke, and it's a huge problem. So people aren't really prepared to negotiate their position once they've got into that situation. So having the Strata Council, which really can effectively work well to A, enforce the bylaws with respect to what's really happening, and B, work as a third party to kind of reduce the conflict between the parties, can be a real asset for everybody.
So Elaine, and I remember using this phrase when you visited us last, the whole caveat emptor approach. Let the buyer beware. So if you're going to plunk down a serious amount of money on a nice condo somewhere, perhaps it's in your best interest, particularly if you're a bit of a barbecue buff, to ask, are barbecues allowed in this building? Can I bring my brand new $1,400 bucket seats and all the bells and whistles thing that I just bought at my old place? Can I bring that with me? And if they say no, then this is not the building for you to buy into. It can be that simple, can't it?
It can be that simple, but I guess when you buy a place and you're excited about what the place looks like and what the layout of the place is and what the location is, sometimes you also forget that you're buying into a community. That seems to be maybe the last thing that people think about when they buy a place. They think location, they think, square footage, what does the place look like, what a great view.
Right.
But they don't necessarily think about the neighbors that they're buying into as well.
Now, in this, there's a kind of a turnover of generations going on, and as boomers come to retirement age, they're moving out of those big 4,000 square foot suburban homes with the 4 bedrooms and the multiple baths, because the kids are all gone, and who needs all that cleaning and yard work? So they're downsizing into condos, many of them for the first time, and they're accustomed to that privacy, that personal space, that get out of my face, that they're accustomed to and have been for all of their lives. So what advice, as a person who's seen more than her share of conflicts over the years professionally, what advice would you have for first-time condo buyers with respect to these very personal details?
One thing that I would say is that sometimes people read the minutes of the council meetings and general meetings of the Strata Corporation just with an idea to considering the repair issues. So they consider, okay, is the building in good shape? What am I buying into building-wise? It is also important to review those minutes with an idea of what type of community am I buying into.
Okay.
If you see what disputes that Strata Corporation has had, let's say, over the last 5 years, you can get a good idea as to whether it's a place that you're going to fit in.
Tony, if I'm a buyer and I'm looking at condos and my agent, my real estate agent is parading me through umpteen different model suites and so on, would that agent have the minutes that Elaine just referred to from those condo or strata council meetings available to me, the prospective buyer, as a matter of homework that perhaps I should look through before signing on the dotted line?
Well, you use the word agent, so they're your representative. So it's important that you get your agent to ask for the information. Request copies of minutes, request an information certificate, request a copy of rules. It's supposed to come with the information certificate, and get a copy of the bylaws that are in effect from the Land Title Office printed off, and get a copy of the strata plan and look closely at what you're really getting. Some of the challenges that people have are misunderstandings. I think people move into a condo. They've lived in a house. They just look at a condo. They suddenly realize it has granite countertops, a great view. They're not going to have to do lawns anymore. Mm-hmm. They're not having to clean the gutters anymore. Nice balcony. It seems all perfect. But until they've looked at the bylaws, and maybe they're considering buying into a building, but maybe the bylaw doesn't allow pets. Maybe it does allow rentals. Maybe it doesn't have rentals. Maybe it's an age restriction bylaw. Maybe it prohibits barbecues. Maybe it prohibits air conditioners to be installed on the building. So, I think lifestyle is a pretty critical thing that people have to look at.
Is it a legal requirement, Elaine, that I, as the prospective buyer, be shown the bylaws to this building I'm terribly interested in buying into? Should I see those before I sign?
Your realtor would have a duty to show it to you. But what happens sometimes is that people maybe don't read it. They don't understand the importance of it.
Okay.
But of course, it's hugely important if you're planning and you're packing up and you have a dog and a barbecue and a hot tub and you're going to all move in with those things, and none of those things are allowed. It's going to be a real big problem when you get there.
Okay, so the last thing you want is surprises. So if you're not being shown the amount of information you think you should be, then even though your realtor may have dropped the ball, it's still on you to request that information, isn't it, Tony?
Well, it is, but the other thing that we see as a really common practice is that strata corporations amend their bylaws. They create a new kind of set that they pass around all the owners to say, keep it for potential buyers. And what ends up happening is those bylaws just get passed on to a potential buyer or an agent who comes along. And I strongly encourage people not to rely on those documents.
Right.
Only rely on the bylaws that you have printed from the Land Title Registry, and not just the last set that was printed, but probably the last 5 or 10 years set of bylaws that were printed, and talk to your agent, and maybe even go and talk to your lawyer about them if you have some questions before you buy, because these bylaws could be a deal breaker. They could seriously affect how you can or cannot use your property.
You're listening to Experts on Call and Quay Pacific's Talk About Strata on AM 650 with Tony Gioventu, Executive Director of the Condominium Homeowners Association of British Columbia, and strata lawyer Elaine McCormack from Alexander Holburn in Vancouver. I'm Stirling Faux. We'll be right back.
Delivering relevant and beneficial consumer information. This is Experts on Call, and there's more still ahead on AM 650.